Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. I've lived in my beach house for over 20 years now. It's nothing too fancy, just a nice little one-story home right on the sand. I inherited it from my grandparents who bought it back in the 70s. They loved this place and so do I. About 5 years ago, a new homeowners association started up. Apparently, a bunch of the newer residents got together and decided we needed more oversight and community engagement, or something like that. I didn't pay them much attention at first. I'm kind of a private person and didn't really care what they were up to. Boy, do I regret that now. The president of this homeowners associations is a woman named Karen, who moved here just a couple years ago. From what I can tell, she basically appointed herself president and started making up rules left and right. I started getting letters in the mail about my mailbox not being the approved color and my fence needing to be replaced because it was an eyesore. One Saturday afternoon, I was minding my own business, tossing a ball with my dog in the sand right by my house. All of a sudden, Karen comes marching over shouting that I'm not allowed to have dogs on the beach. I calmly explained that this is my private property and she has no authority here. She insisted the entire beach belonged to the homeowners associations, and as president, she can restrict pets. This wasn't the first ridiculous claim she had made about owning the beach in front of my house. I tried to explain that my deed clearly shows my property line extends all the way to the water, but she just scoffed and said the homeowners associations has jurisdiction over all beachfront homes. I told her to get off my property before I called the police. She stormed off in a huff, but I knew this wasn't the end of it. The next week, I got a letter from a lawyer representing Karen and the homeowners associations claiming I was trespassing on homeowners associations' property and threatening legal action if I didn't cease all activities on their beach immediately. I couldn't believe the nerve of this woman. I took my deed and property records down to the lawyer I've used for years. He reviewed everything and assured me I was completely in the right. Not only did my records prove my ownership of the beachfront, but the homeowners associations had zero authority to make demands about private property. Armed with this information, I wrote a strongly worded letter back to the homeowners association's lawyer refuting their claims. I made it clear I would not back down from using my own land. I attached copies of all my property ownership documentation in case Karen needed help reading a basic deed. That must have lit a fire under Karen, because a few days later I was served with an actual lawsuit claiming I was trespassing and creating a nuisance by using Homeowners Association's beachfront. The lawsuit demanded I cease beach activities immediately and pay fines for previous violations. I met with my lawyer who filed a response refuting their nonsense claims. He also explained that we would have to go to court to settle this issue since Karen was clearly delusional. I dreaded the confrontation but was fully prepared to defend my rights. In the meantime, Karen began staking out my property, trying to document my violations. Every time I stepped foot on the beach, she would take photos and threaten me with fines. She even called the police a few times, but of course they said it was a civil matter and had to be dealt with in court. I started feeling like a prisoner in my own home, unable to even use my own yard without harassment from this deranged woman. Finally, our court date arrived. I showed up in my best suit with a briefcase full of evidence proving my legal ownership. Karen strode in, dressed in an ugly pantsuit, looking extremely smug and confident. That made me nervous, but I trusted that the law was on my side. When it was my turn to present my case, I gave the judge my original deed, the property survey showing the boundaries, my property tax records, and other documents all establishing my legal rights. Karen went next and simply declared that as Homeowners Association's president, she had authority over all beachfront homes. She produced zero evidence to back up this ludicrous assertion. The judge listened patiently before turning to Karen and asking, "Do you have any documentation showing Homeowners Association's ownership of this beach?" Karen's smug smile faded as she stammered, "Well, no, but as president I decide what Homeowners Association's property is." The judge nodded thoughtfully. While homeowners associations do have certain powers, they cannot supersede legal property ownership rights as established by deeds and local records. He asked me to present my deed again. After examining it, he declared, "This clearly establishes your ownership over the beach area in question. Without documentation indicating homeowners association's acquisition of this land, I find in favor of the defendant." Karen's face turned red with anger. The judge ignored her sputtering and continued, "I also find the homeowners association's claim to be frivolous with no supporting evidence. The defendant is entitled to compensation for legal fees. I fought to hide a smile as Karen scowled. The judge dismissed us and told her not to waste the court's time again. As we left, Karen shoved past me, shouting that this wasn't over. I held my head high and reminded her firmly that I have the law on my side. Sure enough, a week later, I received a threatening letter from the Homeowners Association's lawyer vowing to file an appeal. I took this back to my attorney, who said we had an ironclad case and would easily win again if it went to a higher court. He filed paperwork seeking damages from the homeowners associations for harassment and legal fees. This seemed to make Karen finally realize she didn't have a leg to stand on. A month later, I received notice that the lawsuit was being dropped and no appeal would be filed. The letter contained a legal pledge to cease all claims against my property. I happily signed and sent it back. Ever since the judge's ruling, Karen has stayed off my beach. She still glares when she sees me using her shore but doesn't dare confront me directly anymore. I make a point to take my dog on long walks right by the water just to taunt her. The homeowners associations has toned down their absurd demands and now leave me blissfully alone. I'm just glad I had the proper legal resources to protect my rights. Karen clearly thought she could bully me into giving up my land, but justice prevailed in the end. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This happened a few years ago when I was serving overseas with the U.S. military. The location I was at was in a poorer area. There were a fair number of panhandlers, a lot of petty crime, and just people doing stupid things. Well, one racket that goes on in this area, and apparently in other areas of the country too, is the local cops incentivize reporting vehicles with out-of-date inspection stickers. Apparently, they give these people access to the inspection database if they think the sticker is fake or stolen, which actually does happen. If you drive a motorcycle, one of the things they tell you when you in process is to keep the sticker in your wallet and not on the vehicle, or else it'll just get peeled off. Anyway, what these people will do if they find a car with an out-of-date sticker, or if they run the plates and find it's out of date, they will jimmy the door open, steal every single thing out of the car, and leave a note that they've taken it to the police station. The idea is that you show up at the police station to get your stuff, and they force you to pay the fine for an overdue sticker, and then give you a deadline for an inspection, or else you'll get another fine. Well, I came out to my car one morning, and lo and behold, there was a note on my seat saying that all my stuff was at the local police station because my inspection sticker was fake, and I had to go get it. Not only am I late for work, but my kid is also going to be late for school because there's no bus, and I have to drive her every morning on my way. Also, my inspection sticker is not out of date, so I have no idea what's going on. Now here's the thing that was extremely problematic. I had put my passport and my wife and kids' passports in the glove box, because I was taking them to the base to get some paperwork done, as well as grab some paperwork for my wife to apply for a new passport because hers was expired. I'm very forgetful, so I put them in the night before and made sure the car was locked. Yeah, dumb mistake. Anyway, I get to the station, ask them what the heck was going on, and then, when I have them look at the inspection documents that the guy had taken, which clearly stated the car had been inspected and was current, they apologized and told me that they would give my things back, and I had to wait there for a second. I asked to file a police report for theft, but they looked at me like I had 3 heads and told me nothing was stolen, even though somebody broke into my car and took my things. This is when a light bulb went off in my head, and this might fall into the unethical category. The guy had taken official U.S. passports, which might be a problem, but probably nothing would come of it since they were turned right into the police. However, I asked him where my wife's passport was. They told me that whatever is there is there. I said I needed a police report because I needed to contact the U.S. Embassy about a stolen passport, and the fact that this police station would know exactly who the person was that stole it because they had dropped off my things that morning? I have never seen someone's attitude change as quickly as that cop's attitude changed. He tried to talk me out of filing a police report, but I was pretty insistent, so I went ahead with the police report, and then I did contact the embassy and reported the passport stolen and gave them all the information of the police station. When I got the police report, I emailed it to them as well. I wound up getting a free passport out of it for my trouble. The embassy told me they were going to handle it, and from what I heard, the person who broke into my car actually got arrested and fined and was looking at additional charges because he stole foreign documents. I really would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when one of the local cops rolled into wherever he was at and told him to come with them. I don't feel bad at all. Hopefully the dude learned his lesson and I did not have any further issues until I PCSD home. The next one is a petty revenge story. I leased my rental condo to a single mother with 3 kids in 2016. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit. I had a grace period of 3 days for rent, but they were always late. I did not charge them late fees, thinking she is a single mother, and would follow up consistently to get my rent. Most of the time I would receive it too, 3 weeks late and sometimes 2 months late. In my mind, as long as they were paying and I could help by giving them some time, all was good. Suddenly in 2020, her husband started living there too. He traveled for work but lived there, and the money that she had been sending me through Zelle had always been coming from his account since day one. I let it go and remained civil. He started communicating with me at every delay. Sometimes he would go silent for 4, 5 weeks and I wouldn't be able to reach either of them. I would threaten eviction and they would come back and pay me. In hindsight, I should have evicted them, but COVID happened and I didn't want to throw them out. Finally, at the end of 2022, they informed me that by March 2023, they would be moving out. They had just bought a house, and they were very appreciative of my kindness and help. They were supposed to leave by March 6th, 2023, and I told them that if they cleaned the house and left it in good condition, they wouldn't have to worry about rent for March. March 6th came, and they told me they were still moving and cleaning. I let it go because I had no potential renter yet, and I was just glad that they were cleaning it up. I still didn't have the key to the condo. I communicated with them during the month of March, saying potential renters wanted to see the place, and they told me to send them over. Potential renters would go there and knock, but no one would open the door, and I couldn't reach them. This happened twice, and they would call me later, claiming that the potential renters never showed up and lied to me. I was getting antsy, and on March 20th, I called and texted both the husband and wife for a few days straight, asking them to give me the keys. Nothing. No response. On March 24th, my friend and I decided to go there to see what was going on. We lived an hour away. I called both of them, and there was no response. I decided to look them up in the county land records. I knew the county they were building a house in and was able to find their new address. My friend and I decided to go to their house and get the key. We reached there, knocked on the door, and the son opened it and yelled for his mom. His mom came down and pretended to cry, saying they had lost the key. In my mind, then why couldn't they tell me? And why would they ignore my countless texts and phone calls? At this point, I was still being civil, and I said that's fine. I will get a locksmith and charge them the fees. We went to the condo next, and to our surprise, the condo was open. They never bothered to lock it. As soon as my friend and I entered, these 3 words came out of our mouths. Oh my gosh. There was this horrible smell. All the walls had patches from a bad paint job. The fridge had rotting food. The carpets stunk like they had never been cleaned. In one room on the carpet, there was a big paint stain, and the door was also busted. It was the worst feeling because I had been so nice to them, and they left my condo unlocked for days, destroyed my place, didn't even have the decency to clean it or pick up my phone. I was furious that my kindness over the years was repaid by this. Finally, not knowing the extent of the damage, I reached out to them, saying I would keep the $1,000 deposit and was asking them to pay $1,800 more for the cleanup job. They declined via text. I told them I would sue them. They ended up getting aggressive and told me they knew the law too and I wouldn't get a single penny from them. Then I worked with a lawyer in the first week, still not knowing the full extent of the damage, but just some. I sent a demand letter for $3,000. Nothing. Then I worked with a contractor, and just for the painting it cost me around $7,000, as there were around 1,000 patches that they had to sand off. I'm not even exaggerating, I got multiple quotes. The cleaning crew went in the morning at 4 a.m. and finished at 3 p.m. Everything that you can think of that was dirty was dirty. The oven and fridge had not been cleaned for years. There was heavy clogging in both bathrooms' drains. The toilet was worse than a public toilet. They charged me $600 to clean the house. It ended up costing me $7,600. I continued with the lawyer and ended up filing a claim for $11,000, though people told me that I was wasting money and they would never pay. For me, I couldn't let them get away with it. I ended up charging them for late fees for not paying the month of March that I had agreed to waive if they cleaned the house. I had in my contract $50 per day for any delay. By the time I had filed, it was easily a few $1,000s. I asked a few Redditors for my throwaway account, and they told me about late fee regulations. But my lawyer told me that they did sign a contract, and in this state, we could sue them for $50 per day until the day we filed. Then the saga began. It was my responsibility to serve them and let them know about the mediation. Then it was my responsibility to serve them for the court date. They actively avoided being served twice, and it cost me $400 just to serve them twice. They still didn't show up for mediation or the court date, and judgment was filed in my favor as they didn't show up. Finally, an arrest warrant was issued for both of them. I was asked to serve them again. I begged the clerk, saying I couldn't spend more money to serve them. She got a document signed by the judge for an alternative method of serving that included text and email. I texted and emailed them their arrest warrants and the next court date. They finally showed up, and the judge made them give me all their information. They were in court, but I could appear on Zoom. I was able to ask them for all their information, including social security numbers, driver's license numbers, bank account statements, salary, and work addresses. I have to say I felt a bit sorry as it seemed they were still struggling and didn't have enough money to pay the rent based on their statements. The husband earned $150K, and the wife earned $60K, but their bank account didn't have any money. Finally, I told them I could start garnishing 25% of their monthly wages, or they could pay me immediately. They promised to pay me in chunks of $1,500 every month. I still don't have all of it yet, but them sitting there and giving me all the information was the best revenge I could get. If they had just agreed to pay me $1,800 in the beginning or $3,000 that I demanded, they wouldn't have been on the hook for $11,000. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Some years ago, I was a 25-year-old male and broke up with my 24-year-old female girlfriend. She had cheated on me after 7 years together, and where we lived, we had a 1-month notice to leave our apartment. In order not to pay 2 rents, I had to wait until the end of the notice before moving out. In the end, she kept the apartment with a new roommate, but we still had to pass the landlord's inspection to get our security deposit back. I moved out something like 5 days before the inspection date, and living with someone you dumped for almost a month can be hard. She was either trying to convince me to stay with her or trying to make my life miserable because I dumped her. As you can guess, when I moved out, I wasn't thrilled to know that I'd have to come back some days later to refill holes, repair some stuff, and clean the apartment with her before the inspection. But hey, I'll do it. So just before leaving, sitting in my car about to start the engine, she tells me, "You better really help me with the cleanup. You either clean really well or I keep the security deposit." Maybe a bit of context was lost in translation because this discussion wasn't in English. The way she worded it could mean either a threat or a choice. The tone and context sure enough clarified that it wasn't supposed to be a choice. Some things to know. I sure don't love doing chores, but cleaning isn't an issue for me. For her, most of it isn't either. But in the 7 years we were together, she never cleaned the toilets or the bathtub siphon because it disgusted her, so I did it, and she did other stuff to compensate. Money-wise, I was a working IT engineer and she was a student. So the security deposit, around 300 to 400 euros each, may be huge for her, but I didn't care that much, so I simply replied, "Okay." She looked at me a bit confused, not understanding my answer. I said, "Okay, keep the deposit and do it all by yourself." I didn't wait for an answer, drove off, and when I arrived, I messaged the landlord, with my ex in CC, telling them to send the full deposit to my ex and none to me, and I never set foot in this apartment again. The next one is an entitled People story. Okay, so for a bit of backstory, this happened about 5 years ago when I was living in a group home under CPS care in Australia, aka Department of Communities, Child Protection and AMP Family Support, so apologies if anything appears to be weird or if details are left out. I'm posting this to vent as thinking about this event still gives me anxiety. I have been obsessed with Nintendo since I was very young, specifically the Nintendo Wii, if my post history doesn't make this obvious. And at the time, I had a white Wii coupled with Wii Sports, and a dog-themed game that I can't remember the name of. I saved up almost a month's worth of pocket money to buy this console with several of its games, and I loved the console as it was an escape from the abuse that another resident has put me through. Let's call him Mike, because I have since forgotten his name. Mike, to put it kindly, was an abusive person. He would always pick fights with me, resort to violence if he didn't get his way, and often stole and/or destroyed my property. Such as the time he punched me in the back of the head because of an argument that I don't fully remember. All I remember was that I had the argument, got punched, and the next minute I was laying on the couch with a massive headache. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. This all started when Mike and I were at the dinner table, and I tried to start a conversation about what we would do if we ran our own empire. He went on and on about how if he ran his own empire, he would execute me. And I started to get a bit annoyed as I tried changing the subject. He just kept going on and on until I snapped at him and told him to shut up and let the others talk. That was a massive mistake because he got so enraged that he walked from the dinner table and entered my room, which I accidentally left unlocked. He proceeded to trash my room, destroying my brand new Nintendo Wii, all the game discs, and even a Kodak camera that a teacher gifted me. I rushed to try and stop him, but the caregivers, the adults who are supposed to care for us and avoid this kind of thing from happening, proceeded to restrain me instead of him, thinking I was the aggressor. I couldn't do anything as he slammed my console on the ground multiple times until it was in pieces. I can't remember much of what happened after that, but I do recall picking up my destroyed console and shards of the game that were still inside fell out. I was very upset, to say the least. A few weeks went by, and I finally scraped up some money to buy another console and another copy of Wii Sports. Things were pretty good until I forgot to lock my door again when I was having my regular phone call with my mother. When I finished the phone call, I went back to my room and realized my console was missing. I went to the lounge, and that little guy was playing Wii Sports Tennis on my console. Being the introverted and honestly quite scared kid that I was, I kindly asked him if I could have the console back, and he completely ignored me. After a few minutes of this, I decided screw it, and forcefully unplugged the console and walked off. He got mad and threw the Wii remote at me, then tried attacking me again. I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, and asked the caregivers to grab the remote and cables, which they did after a long incident where Mike tried throwing bricks through my bedroom window. I finally moved out a few months later to a foster home after encountering a few more entitled and violent residents come and go, and I made sure the console came with me. I still have the console somewhere in storage, but my caseworker can't find it. So I bought another one, which I still play to this day. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.